Wasn't Kerry initiated into the Skull and Bones in 1966? And then
That's right. Bush in 1968.
Victor Ashe, Bush's roommate, in 1967, and then Bush himself in 1968.
Right.
And then that story about Victor Ashe and Bush being more than just roommates, but
I really wouldn't know. I couldn't speculate on that. I think the real crime, Anthony, is consecrating oneself to the devil for the sake of worldly power. That's the real crime. That's the real offense. I think one's at much greater risk doing that than if they're involved in some kind of irregular behavior.
Doesn't the Vatican address this issue? I mean,
it certainly has in the past.
Certainly exorcisms. Should we be exorcising the President of the United States?
You can't really free someone from demonic possession against their will. It would have to be where the person is seeking help or members of his family are seeking help and they bring the possessed person to the church. The case is examined very carefully by a qualified exorcist. There's a process of discernment to determine his condition. Is it a psychiatric problem? Is it related to drugs? Is it related to some kind of mental illness? Or is it demonic possession? Or is it all?
We both saw Chris Everard's.
Right, the scene of
his
exorcism.
This is the real
Yes, it
life
was.
thing in
Italy.
A DVD that he put out called The Illuminati.
That's right.
Taken from my 3-volume series that I put out in 1967 called The Illuminati. CFR. You look at this and you've got to believe that this is for real. And
yeah, it is. It's unusual to see an actual case documented on film like that, where the general public has access to it. And it was 100% authentic. The priest was a Passionist priest, according to his garb, the cassock he was wearing. His explanation of the process of exorcism, and then the actual exorcism itself as he was praying over this possessed teenage girl, was all authentic. Absolutely 100% authentic. And the point that Chris was making in the documentary was that when you get mixed up in these secret societies and consecrate yourself to the devil, and in the case of Freemasonry, it would more properly be identified as witchcraft, but again, according to the mind of the church, there's no difference at all. One runs the risk of demonic possession or oppression. There's various degrees of demonic influence, but they put themselves under demonic control. They really risk it. And in some cases, it could actually become a case of possession.
when I asked Bill Buckley about his membership...
Oh, you talked to him?
Yeah, I talked to him in New Orleans. I asked him about his membership in the Skull and Bones, how he justified that with this phony Christian conservative theology.
You asked him about Skull and Bones?
Oh, yes, I did.
What happened?
He started to bad rap Dr. Anthony Sutton, who was a friend of mine.
Really?
And he got up and practically ran out of the auditorium in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I mean,
I understand.
They're supposed to walk out of the room.
I understand that's the classic Bones response. Traditionally, in days gone by, one would simply stand up and walk away without a word spoken.
I did that to McGeorge Bundy, and he practically became physically spastic. He was just going all over the stage and couldn't talk and couldn't...
Well, I see what you're getting at. Maybe this overreacting like that, there could be something else involved, not simply just an emotional response.
Somebody in an exorcism addressing this issue, and Linda Blair spinning her head.
Whenever you tell the truth, Anthony, whenever we speak the truth, it can have this effect on some, because it's not politically correct.
Now, in National Review, the masthead has certain individuals who are involved not in movements that would be politically compatible with Christians and conservatives, but people who might be involved with agendas that are alien to the Christian conservative. Aren't there people whose agenda is alien to the Christian conservative movement in this country and are and the masthead of National Review?
I'm very pleased to be joined today by a friend and the Washington editor of National Review magazine, Kate O'Byrne.
Buckley was always paraded out as this great conservative, and we know that he's the fellow who made a move to sell out the American Canal in Panama to the communists.
William F. Buckley Jr. was initiated into Skull and Bones in 1950. So he's been a member of Skull and Bones for 57 years.
Right.
As a Catholic, the moment he's initiated, he automatically incurs excommunication. National Review is founded by William F. Buckley, Jr., who's Skull and Bones and CIA and Council on Foreign Relations. Skull and Bones being a secret society that's condemned by the Church. Why is there a Catholic Washington editor for this magazine? Down in the section for contributors, we have Richard John Newhouse. Actually, that's Father Richard John Newhouse. He was a former Lutheran pastor who supposedly converted. He's now a Catholic priest. Why is a Catholic priest a contributor to a Skull and Bones magazine? Next to his name is Michael Novak. And Michael Novak is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also supposedly a Catholic. Michael Novak received the Templeton Prize. He's also an active member of the American Enterprise Institute, which is a neocon think tank. He was sent to Rome to argue the case for a just war by the Bush administration to represent a viable argument for American Catholics, supposedly, against the wishes of the Pope John Paul II.
When you say a just war, he was arguing for an attack upon an innocent nation.
That's right.
Based upon false information, which resulted in the killing of 650,000 innocent men, women, and children.
So far. That we know of.
As chaplains, you are the witnesses of Christ and His Church to a new order of undivided love and allegiance.
Now, first at 5, KC24 News.
For the first time, President Bush reacts to allegations that U.S. Marines killed Iraqi civilians in Haditha, Iraq.
If in fact the laws were broken, there will be punishment.
Through you, Christ makes sacramentally present in the most tumultuous of circumstances a new heaven and a new earth. In situations of mortal conflict, in a world too often, too typically marked by the absence of peace and love.
President Bush responded to what could become known as the worst criminal misconduct by the U.S. military in Iraq.
I am mindful that there's a thorough investigation going on. If in fact the laws were broken, there will be punishment.
Your task is to bear witness to a promised new world order, and in doing so, you are the nation's good servants, but God's first.
The architects of the New World Order have ways to force you into submission.
It gets more complex all the time, Anthony, with Michael Novak and the American Enterprise Institute, is that the AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, is a neocon think tank. So they hatch a lot of ideas that will promote the neocon agenda.
Is the neocon agenda a one world order, just like Hitler envisioned?
The neocon agenda would appear to be a more fascist agenda, in other words, a national socialist agenda.
A neo-Nazi agenda.
That's right, yeah. And I see this as a kind of catalyst that's being used to bring America into the New World Order. We're supposedly the last superpower in the world, the only superpower left in the world after the so-called fall of the Berlin Wall. And so Americans are still very nationalistic, the people here, but they wouldn't accept a globalist agenda if they knew what was in the works. And so the way to bring them into it is to heighten their patriotism. Pat Buchanan characterized it once as circus patriotism, where they're flying the flag and staunchly supporting the war, and anyone who disagrees with them is a traitor.
Either with us or against us, you're either evil or you're good.
This fascist agenda is being used to dissipate the United States militarily, monetarily, its resources, its resolve even, into acceptance into the single world conglomerate.